Uganda has recently passed an anti-homosexuality act, which will see LGBTIQ people discriminated against because of their sexual orientation. It's disturbing news that people who don't fit the box of heterosexual should be so targeted. And I'm joined now by Outright International. It's a human rights group that is supporting the Ugandan LGBTIQ community in their call for the World Bank to halt loans to Uganda. Neela Ghoshal joins us now from Washington. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I wonder if you could talk to us about what the reality of life is going to be like in Uganda for the LGBTIQ community now that this bill has passed.
Yes, and in fact, I can speak to you not just about what life is going to be like, but how life is already dramatically changing for LGBTIQ people on the ground in Uganda. So this draconian bill was passed.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, I can still hear you.
I'm
Carry
hearing
on.
other voices.
Okay, now I can still hear you.
Okay, thank you. This draconian bill was passed just over a week ago, and we're already seeing the impacts on the ground in Uganda. Yesterday, I was speaking with Adrian Juko, who's the director of a Ugandan human rights organization that is receiving complaints every day from LGBTIQ people who have been evicted from their homes, who've been denied access to health care, or who have faced violence or the threat of violence since the law was enacted by President Museveni. And so the bill is already having its impact. It's very clear that under this law, landlords feel that they are compelled to evict LGBTIQ people. That's happening. People are ending up out in the streets. People are facing threats from their neighbors, being compelled to move. They don't know where to go. And in some cases, there have been actual incidents of discrimination in accessing healthcare, and many, many other LGBTIQ people are staying at home and are afraid to go out and seek healthcare or any other type of public service because the law in Uganda now requires anybody who knows about a queer person to report them to the police. And so essentially people are in hiding at home or wherever they feel is a little bit safe for the moment, but their lives are completely interrupted. LGBTIQ advocacy organizations are being thrown out of their offices. They're being told they can't continue their work providing services, providing HIV services, providing legal support. And basically, if you are LGBTIQ in Uganda right now, there is nowhere you can go for safety.
It's absolutely distressing. Talk to me about what the community in Uganda, and I understand the way you work as an organisation is you try and support what local communities want to do. So my understanding is that there's a call now for the World Bank not to advance any more loans to Uganda. Talk to me about how that might work and whether there's been any response from the World Bank on this.
That's right. A group called the Convening for Equality in Uganda, which is a collective of Ugandan LGBTIQ activists, sent a letter to the World Bank asking for the World Bank to suspend all loans and operations in Uganda. And this is for several reasons. One is that under the letter of the law, World Bank personnel in Uganda themselves are going to be required to report people, are going to be required to discriminate against people. And the World Bank has a structure in place, a framework called the ESF, the Environmental and Social Framework, which sets forth that the World Bank will not issue loans to countries that are going to implement those loans in a discriminatory fashion. So right now, if the World Bank continues to support Uganda's health sector, its education sector, its infrastructure, those working on those projects will be required to discriminate. LGBTIQ people will be turned away, or worse, will be turned into the police. And so Ugandan activists have called on the World Bank to do the only ethical thing that it can do in this situation in order to abide by its own principles, which is to suspend loans until the Ugandan government revokes this appalling law.
And have they said anything? Has the World Bank actually commented on what they're going to do?
Yes, Outright has been in dialogue with the World Bank. We were meeting with the World Bank yesterday with Ugandan activists. There's a dialogue going on, and the World Bank has committed to undertaking a review of its projects in Uganda and determining whether or not these projects can go forward. Now, we think that the answer is quite straightforward. This is the worst anti-LGBTIQ law in the world. It is also the only law of this nature that has come into effect anywhere in the world since the World Bank put in place this new environmental and social framework about 7 years ago. And so the answer is not something that requires much debate. There's no way under this law that the World Bank can continue its work ethically. And so we hope that that review is completed very quickly and that the World Bank does come to the conclusion that it's impossible for them to move forward, and that on that basis, they will engage in a very serious dialogue with President Museveni himself and with the government of Uganda about what steps can be taken to stop the implementation of this law.
What information are you getting about the ordinary people of Uganda? You know, South Africa, we have a very advanced constitution which enshrines the right to a person's sexual orientation. We still sadly see discrimination. For example, at the moment, there's a group angry with a supermarket chain that is supporting Pride Month. But the reality is our laws do protect your rights. The people of Uganda, are they feeling that they are forced to now turn in people that have different sexual orientations? Or are they actually, in the main, quite a conservative country and in support of discrimination against gay people?
There is a lot of widespread prejudice and discrimination against LGBTIQ people in Uganda. It existed before the enactment of this law. It will continue in some form, even if the law is repealed. That said, it's very important that the leaders lead on issues like this, on fundamental human rights. It's not the job of the government of Uganda or the parliament of Uganda to say, oh, some of our citizens think that Ugandan people should be put to death, so therefore we're going to put in place a law that will put them to death. Popular bias can't be the cause for stripping people of their human rights. So yes, at the moment, general public opinion is not on the side of LGBTIQ people in Uganda. That said, there's been a lot of important work that's been happening over the last decade in which LGBTIQ organizations have been reaching out. They've been reaching out to parents. They've formed their own organization modeled after PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, which we have in the United States and in many other countries. Mothers of LGBTIQ people wrote a letter to one of Uganda's main newspapers protesting the law because mothers and family members have been reached in recent years and understand that their children are who they are, their family members are who they are, and that the role of families is to support them. So attitudes have been changing over the last 10 years due to the assiduous work of the very organizations that are now being shut down. So basically, the government is putting in place a roadblock to any further progress. It will not be possible to talk about LGBTIQ rights. It won't be possible for people who support their queer family members to say publicly that they support them. And that very slow but important attitudinal change will be halted and probably reversed, because when Parliament says that a group of people do not deserve to live, some of the public will follow that view.
Yeah, it's absolutely tragic. Let's hope we hear from the World Bank. Neela Ghoshal, thank you so much for chatting to us.